Folks are continuing to arrive. Thank you so much. I'm going to keep speaking so you know that your audio is indeed working, and you can adjust your volume as necessary. We're going to ask that you place yourself on mute as you arrive so that your background noise does not interfere with the hearing of others. Um, and we're thankful you're here. Great. I have 7 o'clock. And so we have a lot to talk about tonight. And so as folks continue to arrive, I just want to say thank you for your presence this evening. My colleague Canon Michele and I hope to walk through the budget for our 2026 programmatic year and to talk about the process that brought us to this point. For anyone who is a part of church ministry, you know that the document of the budget is really a faith document. It really talks and shares about the priorities of a community of faith. I'm sure you have been part of budget conversations in your local congregation, and we now do this on a diocesan scale. And so our conversation tonight will be focused on how this budget tells the story of who we are as the Episcopal Diocese of California and how our resources are prioritized for ministry. I want to say that if you are in need of translation, we are so thankful to have Miguel Sosa with us this evening. You're invited to press the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. You may have to press more to see that button. For interpretation, Michele and I will be speaking at a slower pace so that the interpreter can keep track of what we are sharing. I also want to share that there will be time for questions. And so as we move through the document, if questions arise, we're going to ask that you take note of them. There is a chat feature. You can place them in the chat and we will go back to them, or you can hold on to them and include them in the chat at the time for questions. We're going to ask that you also keep your microphone on mute so that all those who are here can hear the conversation as it's provided. And then finally, I want to invite us into prayer before we begin our conversation, asking for God to be present among us. The Lord be with you and also with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance, your wisdom, and your support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a body, and nurture the bonds of this community that we share. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that might affect our churches, our ministries, our communities, and our outreach as the Episcopal Diocese of California. And continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, all that we are is for the glory of you, God, and for the service of God's people. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. If you could remain on mute as we continue tonight's presentation, and I'm going to invite my colleague, Michele, to share her screen. So Michele, we're able to see your presentation view. Is it possible for us to see the public-facing view?
Oh my gosh, did I do the wrong one? Sorry.
That's okay.
Hold on one second. Let me try this again. It's embarrassing to say I've actually rehearsed this. Okay, it says screen 4. Screen 4 is this one. Okay, did it do the right one this time?
It's loading.
Okay.
It's loading. Oh, that's correct.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
don't know what happened.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So again, welcome to tonight's conversation. And we hope that if you are in need of an interpretation, that you press the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. Um, and we'll begin. We want to start with gratitude for all of the people and the bodies of our governance that this budget has come through and across for approval. First, tonight, I'm joined by my colleague, Canon Michele Racusin, who is our canon for uh, finance. We're also joined by Mr. Miguel Sosa, who is our Spanish translator and interpreter. And a very special thank you to the governing bodies that brought us to this point. First, on our staff, our diocesan communications team, and within our governing bodies, the Committee for Program and Budget, our Finance Committee, and our Executive Council, and all of you for being here this evening. Before we begin with the numbers of our budget and the areas of ministry that are included, I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about what brought us to this point and the people and faithful service that has been a part of bringing this document to you this evening. I also want to provide some definitions of these governing bodies. We say these names, but I want to be clear about their purpose and where they fit in the larger scheme of this process. I want to first start with the Committee on Program and Budget, which is chaired by the Reverend Kirsten Spalding. Um, the Program and Budget Committee is responsible for evaluating all the requirements and requests for funding from the Diocesan Operating Fund. And this committee consults with representatives of commissions, deaneries, and committees receiving funding requests and helping to be a collecting place of those requests. I'm really thankful for the work of Reverend Kirsten in inviting folks into this process. And I've heard feedback from our deaneries that the communication from this committee has been stellar. Once the program and budget, alongside the staff and with Canon Michele leading in the crunching of numbers, once that has been brought together, it is then given to our Finance Committee for review for financial integrity. Our Finance Committee is led by our Treasurer, Lane Wrigley. Once the Finance Committee votes upon the document, it is then given to our Executive Council, which truly is our fiduciary board within the life of our diocese. And they oversee and help us maintain this budget between conventions. And so this document is a document of the diocese. It's a document of our shared diocesan ministry. It's a document of our executive council who will lead us in making sure that we embody this document in the upcoming year. I also want to name that we are in a liminal space right now. We have a new bishop in Bishop Austin Rios, and we are in the process of a strategic vision. That work is still in progress and has not been completed. And so the budget that you will see this evening is largely taken place before the completion of our strategic vision process. That's important to note because, as we know, the process that is unfolding and that we will hear more about in convention may have budgetary implications. And so Executive Council is aware of that. And you will see that there will be a space for flexibility in making sure that the priorities of Bishop Austin, the priorities of our governing bodies are still able to be seen through. Um, and so I want to just name this sort of liminal space that we are in as we seek to be faithful in this time as a diocese. And then finally, before we move into our numbers, I want to just name some of the changes that occurred in this year's budgeting process. With the work of our Program and Budget Committee, proposals were collected from Executive Council, deaneries, and other interested parties throughout the budgeting process. There was scrutiny and collaboration on each line of the budget by our Canon for Finance, our Program and Budget Committee, our Finance Committee, and there were continuous conversations about commitment to transparency and communication across the diocese at each step of this journey. And so we welcome your questions at the end of our conversation tonight, and we hope that there will be an opportunity for you to dive into the document even more as it becomes available to you in the days and weeks ahead. Next slide. So we want to start with the revenue portion of our budget. This is the sources of funding for ministry, which is really in many ways the foundation of our work. Our shared ministry is made possible through the faithful stewardship of our congregations and the prudent management of our shared resources. And it's this work that allows us to fund the vital work that's happening across our diocese.
And so now we look at the numbers that support the vision, that support our mission. And so this is divided into two columns. We have on the blue column on the left-hand side are the numbers that were approved by convention last year for our 2025 year. And then the red column on the right-hand side is the proposal, our draft for the 2026 budget. The COLA numbers came in this year. We use a publicly published CPI indice, and this year for the San Francisco Bay Area, it came in at 1.5%. So many of the line items get adjusted by 1.5%, line items such as salary increases. And then that 1.5% also comes into play with our assessment formula. So you can see that our gross assessments this year are about $3.7 million. And that comes out to that formula was computed. The first $96,730 is the amount that is assessed at 5%, and the amounts over that at 17%. So as you know, nobody pays 17%. It's a marginal rate. And you'd be surprised at how many congregations are paying at the 5%. So you can also see that we're very dependent on assessments. And we're also aware that some congregations struggle in trying to pay their assessment. So we have allowed $45,000, which is on the second line, and that's the amount that's been set aside and not included in our spending as assessment relief. So as congregations apply for assessment relief, these are the funds available to help them with that relief. So that gives us a net of $3.6 million to spend from assessments to fund our ministries. Our endowment what we do is we've got about $13,750,000 available for us to in those endowments. And what we do is we take a 4% draw each year, but this 4% is a rolling 3-year average. So and that helps protect us from years where the market goes down, and protects us also from overspending when the market goes up. So it provides an average over a 3-year period. So we're at about $550,000 again this year. We also use some funding from the Expanding Horizons fundraising event that took place several years ago. And that $68,000 is basically two pieces. So one piece is $18,000, which has been set aside from Expanding Horizons by Executive Council to fund the modest stipend of our deans in the deaneries. So that's $18,000 of that. The other $50,000 is money that was committed to fund the program for racial, social, and environmental justice. So initially, the funding is and was 100 up to $150,000 a year to fund that program for a 3-year period, with the goal of being able to wean our diocese out of Expanding Horizons and fully fund that important work with operating income. So as you can see that this is the second year, and instead of 150,000, we are taking 50,000 from Expanding Horizons. So that's been a huge step forward. And our goal, the goal of the Executive Council, is to make that zero in the next year or so. Below that, you see some funding from the Bishop's Discretionary Fund. This is a special fund. It's called Christie, probably named after the donor. And this was something that Bishop Mark started, and he funded it at $125,000 a year. It is a discretionary fund amount. Who knows if Bishop Austin will continue this in the foreseeable future, but certainly this year he is continuing to fund our operating budget with this $125,000. And then the final item in this under endowment and fees comes from plan giving and endowment payroll and benefits fees. And so the diocese manages funds and it serves as the administrator for people's investments in other parts of the United States and other dioceses and other faith communities. And so the diocese takes a half percent as a fee. And so that helps fund the work that goes into doing that. And we also have centralized payroll service. And so there are fees that are charged, $7 a paycheck. That amount, though, is that centralized payroll service is heavily subsidized by the diocese. But these are the funds that are coming in. And then the last bit of income is interest income. And this year we're estimating $40,000 of interest income. These are amounts that are invested in Schwab. They're invested in treasury notes and in CDs. And what that does is it gives us a more balanced portfolio and helps mitigate risk of losing money in the stock market should the stock market become very volatile. So the reason we have that money there is to mitigate risk. And so this is the income from that amount. And the amount invested in that is about $3 million.
Thank you, Michelle. I want to say a couple of items. One, I know that we've received folks from the Marin Deanery. We're on a different link. And so I want to welcome those who are joining us now from the Marin Deanery. Thank you for being here. Also, I've gotten some notes about the chat function being disabled. We are able to see your questions, so please use that function to be able to send the questions to the host. We will also make sure they are read aloud. But I've been getting some messages that regard, so I'm glad folks are speaking their needs. I want to just follow up what Canon Michele just shared around our sources for funds for ministry. And I really want to bring your attention to this pie chart that's before you. Every diocese has a different configuration of how their ministry is funded. This diocese heavily relies on assessments to do the work of ministry on a diocesan scale. 75% of the revenue that comes in for the ministry of our diocesan life is funded from assessments. This is important for those of you who are a part of this diocese for many years. I'm new to the community, but I know that there is a lot of conversation around assessments and how we do the work of ministry together. And I think it's important to just note that as we think about the structure of our assessment formula, it will have direct impact on how we do the work of ministry on a diocesan scale. We will always be able to do the work of ministry. Our God is great, really. And I think it's important to note the reliance of that 75%. Again, just as a note. Okay, you can go forward. Next, I want to talk about the episcopate. So we've talked about revenue. We're now going to be talking about the areas of ministry that make up our diocesan shared community. And a large part of that is the episcopate. We are Episcopalians, so much of our identity is in the office and ministry of the bishop. And the episcopate provides spiritual leadership, provides pastoral care, and also provides the administrative oversight of our diocese. This ministry ensures that our clergy and congregations are supported, our worship is ordered, and our collective vision is guided by the gospel.
Were you continuing?
No, please, you can go.
Okay. All right. And so again, here we have the numbers that are funding our vision. And you can see on here, it's something different this year. And that is that we have taken the cost of each employee and put their salary and benefits together so we can see how much it costs to operate these ministries. So just keep in mind that this is a package. It's salary and benefits. Not everybody is eligible for benefits who works in the diocesan office, just like in your congregations and in your schools. If we took just a broad brush and said, well, like what's the percentage of salaries to benefits, and keeping in mind that this is not a real accurate, it's just kind of a broad brush approach. We're at about 61% salaries and the remainder being benefits. So there you have it. We have the bishop and archdeacon that's funded this year, and we have an administrative assistant to the bishop. We finally have a permanent full-time position. And so that line item increased a little bit because now we are paying benefits to a full-time person. And then if we go back down a little bit, down our list, the diocese owns the residence that the bishop lives in. This was something that happened in the last episcopate. And so we have to maintain it. In the prior year and this year, we funded $35,000 and we didn't increase it this year. And the reason being is that we just went through a large renovation to update things, to paint, to fix roofs and do all those kinds of things that you do when somebody moves out who's been there for a while and a new person moves in. And because of that, we did not believe that we needed to increase the repair and maintenance line item. We have a line item for the archdeacon ministry. It looks like it went down from the prior year from 30 to 23, but actually it went up a little bit because we add that 23 to the archdeacon's salary of $11,498. You can see that ministry increased just a little bit. School for Deacons is a program that is raising up deacons to serve the church. And our diocese is very supportive of that school and making sure that it stays viable. Then we have funding for the deaneries and the regional deans. So remember that the source of the funding from the regional deans came from Expanding Horizons. That's $18,000. And the remainder is going to the deanery. So each deanery gets a small check, and they use that for their local ministries. The clergy conference got a slight bump just because the cost of putting on these conferences increases as time goes on. The next line item, the strategic visioning consultant. So that's work that the consultant is doing this year. And at convention, that whole project will enter a different phase. And we will give thanks to our consultants for their hard work, and we will move on to another stage. And so that's why that line item is not funded in 2026. The bishop's travel and entertainment. So this is travel that he does throughout the diocese and in different parts of our church. So for example, if there is a consecration of a bishop in another diocese, it's very common for bishops from all over the Episcopal Church to come join. And you remember that from the wonderful service that we had when Bishop Rios was consecrated bishop. So that's a piece of that. And you can see that it got bumped up this year from $25,000 to $37,000. And that's because we are leasing a vehicle for the bishop to travel around the diocese. He chose an electric vehicle to honor and be a good steward of our environment and to keep the costs down for transportation. So that's why that piece went up. And then we have the travel to the House of Bishops. So the House of Bishops is a meeting that occurs twice a year, and it's when the bishops from all over the Episcopal Church meet together and do bishopy stuff and pray and study and strategize. We had to bump that up a little bit just to be more realistic with the rising costs of airfare, et cetera. So the House of Bishops up from 5,500 to 7,000. We also have a couple of accruals. So those are monies that we're not spending in the current year, but we charge ourselves for, and then we put that money into an account and save it until the time comes where we have to spend it. So one of the accruals is travel to Lambeth. Lambeth is a conference where all the bishops in the Episcopal Church all of the bishops in the Anglican Communion. So these are not only the churches in the United States and in the Episcopal Church, but worldwide. And they gather once every 10 years to meet with each other and the Archbishop of Canterbury. And so we accrue $3,000 a year so that when that 10-year mark comes, he can fly across the pond and participate in this important meeting. We also have accruals for future ministries and events. So one of those accruals is the Bishop Election Fund. We just went through a bishop election. As you know, they're quite expensive. We are putting aside $15,000 a year. Hopefully Bishop Austin will be with us until he's about 72, and we'll have lots of money saved to elect another bishop. Then we have travel to General Convention. So what this accrual does is it helps fund the deputies that travel to our triennial conventions every 3 years. And that helps fund their registration, their hotels, a little bit of their food and their flights. And so we set aside every year. And then we have some diocesan events and hospitality. And so these would be like a reception after an ordination, for example, or different kinds of meetings and events.
And our Christmas Mass, for example.
Yes. So that is basically the funding for the episcopate.
Thank you. I would like to speak with us about the area of public witness and support of the wider church. As the Episcopal Church in the Bay Area, we understand our call to be able to live out the gospel and seek and serve Christ in all persons and striving for justice and peace. And so through the position of the Canon for Racial, Social, and Environmental Justice and the programmatic expenses in this area. We seek to do that faithfully. I want to walk us through what this area contains. You'll see that there is the line item of salary and benefits for our Canon for Racial, Social, and Environmental Justice, which includes both cash stipend and benefits and pension, with this position being an ordained priest of the Episcopal Church. We also have a programmatic support that seeks to support the work of Justice Ministries of the Canon and the travel that his work will contain. This public witness and support of the wider church also includes our multicultural ministries. And so this is dedicated funding for our diverse commissions, including Afro-Anglican, Asian, Latino, and Indigenous ministries, along with dedicated funding for our diocesan task force that are engaging in justice work. This includes task force that have been enacted by convention. This includes disaster ministries and also our sojourn chaplaincy at San Francisco General Hospital. You'll also see a item of support for the wider church. Being Episcopalian, we know that we are part of a body larger than ourselves. And in this item, we have funds set aside for camp ministry. This diocese is blessed to have camp and conference centers within our diocesan family that are not only serving the needs of our communities, but also serving the needs of the broader church and beyond the Episcopal Church. And so we have funding set aside for the support of those organizations. We also have our assessment to the Episcopal Church. We are, again, a part of a broader body, and just as congregations pay assessment to the diocesan body, each diocese pays assessment to our denominational body. Much of these funds are used to oversee the scaffolding of our denominational structure, and many of these funds are used for grants for local ministry in the context of each of our dioceses within the church. And so we give faithfully to the broader church for the continuance of justice within our community. We also have under this line item our Province 8. Just as our diocese has deaneries, the Episcopal Church has divided our diocesan region, our regional diocesan clusters into provinces. And our diocese is located in Province 8, which is a large swath of the western half of our country, including Hawaii and Guam as well. And that's public witness. Next item we have here is congregational ministry and lifelong formation. As we were composing this budget, and particularly the narrative portion, we were keen on making clear how this budget serves the persons in our pews who are a part of our diocesan family, and how the diocesan budget helps support the ministries of our congregations and communities. And so this next item seeks to outline how we equip and network congregations with tools for spiritual growth, walking alongside them in times of transition and providing support and formation. You will see the budget to salaries for the positions that make up this line item within our budget. Our vocations officer is a half-time position. And so you'll see those figures on the screen. And each of these staff members provide direct support, guidance, and resources to our congregations. That is our goal and aim. You'll see mission support. I really want to take a moment to speak about this. This area of funding is financial support for the ministry and leadership of our mission congregations. 21 congregations within our broader diocese make up this area. There's also funds that are set aside to help with legal expenses, building repairs and maintenance, and to provide support for the operating budget of these congregations. We are seeking to be more transparent about these funds, how they are used, so that the entire diocese can be aware of how these funds are used to further the arm of ministry on behalf of all of us within the Bay Area. Also within this area, you see programmatic support, program support. This funds a wide variety of programs, including leadership formation, so our vestry and warden training, our congregations in transition, the support offered when there is search committees that are assembled in our congregations, Fresh Start, how we support new clergy and those who are new to the Diocese of California to have a strong foundation in onboarding their leadership, interim ministry training, and providing collegiality and fellowship for the clergy who lead our mission congregations. You'll also see campus ministry. This supports the vital ministries of students, faculty, and staff at Stanford, UC Berkeley, and San Francisco State, providing a justice-minded, progressive faith community for young adults who are enrolled in these institutions. You'll also see travel that's outlined for the members of this budget area to do the work that God's given them to do. Michelle, anything you want to add?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Okay, okay. We want to continue with communications and church governance. So it takes resources for us to gather as the diocesan body and to do the work of legislation and governance. And so we wanted to create a clear outline of the infrastructure needs for our life together. And the behind the scenes work that often doesn't get talked about, but is integral in our values of how we gather as the diocese. I want to name that in this area, our staffing, we have two people who are doing this amazing work, and we give thanks for them. In this two-person team, they are managing our website, our newsletters, our event logistics, including this call here today, and the pastoral conversations that are often given in times of emergency or crisis. Within this area, you'll see a line item of program expenses. This is our website hosting and email marketing services that power our digital ministry. You'll see our diocesan convention is in this line item as well, and it funds our largest annual gathering. This covers AV support, live streaming, our voting systems, signage, accessibility services, making sure that it's an inclusive event. And if we say all are welcome, that is recognizable by the way we do business in the church. You'll also see a dedicated line item for translation and interpretation, ensuring that our diocesan gatherings and communications are accessible to all, particularly by providing Spanish language interpretation and translation. We also in this area have the governing bodies of our churches, and these are volunteer lay and ordained leaders that assist Bishop Austin in doing the work of church. We have our Commission on Ministry, our Executive Council, our Standing Committee, and providing ordination process support as well. These all make up the communications and church governance line item. Um, I, I just got a name. I'm not able to see the chat right now, but I feel like it's blowing up. And at some point, we will have some time to see what's in the chat. If there are questions, we'll talk about it as we get to the end of the um, presentation. I now want to go to finance and administration. This is the operational backbone of our diocese, ensuring that there's faithful and professional stewardship of our financial resources. This is really led by my colleague, Canon Michele. And so I want to give you the floor, Michele, to talk about this area.
Right. So within this area, we are in charge of all of the finances, the centralized payroll, HR questions, benefit questions. We do the accounts payable. Um, we do some of the estate management, facilities management. The archivist comes under our wing, as does our new position, the internal auditor, who's the one that is training up to begin the audits for our congregations. And so some of the costs that go into this, we do have a financial statement audit annually. That's a requirement by the Episcopal Church. Those audits are posted on the website once they have been completed and approved by Executive Council. And those audits have been sterling. So you don't need to worry about the condition of our finances at all, and the recording of items. We have a line of credit that is provided for congregations who are doing capital improvements. The way that works is they apply for an advance for a loan, and that application comes to the Finance Committee and then to Executive Council. And what happens is they borrow money from a bank that we have already established a relationship with, and the diocese guarantees that note in case they would default, which is why we go through a quite rigorous process to make sure that the loans appear to be viable in the capital improvements. It costs the diocese some money, however, to set that account up, and there are some loan fees that are paid in advance, and so that's included in this line item. And then also payroll fees. The payroll, centralized payroll service that the diocese provides is heavily subsidized by our operating budget. There's some dollars for continuing ed and license. So this is what provides my continuing education to keep my license alive. I have to have 40 hours of continuing education a year. It got bumped up from the prior year because every other year is my license renewal, and that cost extra money. So next year that will go down a little bit. We have travel for the people that are listed above under the salary and benefits, and that travel has to do with learning about new benefits, the changes in healthcare, and et cetera. We've tried to keep that under wraps, and so what we're doing is we spread out who goes, and the ones that are offered where we can do them virtually, we do that to keep the costs down. There is a line item for medical premiums for retired clergy and lay. This is a program that has been sunsetted. And so for certain needy, that sounds wrong to say needy, certain clergy who were in need of assistance to pay medical premiums, and oftentimes their spouses or significant others, the diocese would supplement their healthcare payments throughout their retirement years. The program's been sunsetted, and so every year, even though the medical costs go up, the number of premiums decreases. And so eventually, as everyone enters the greater life, that will devolve to zero. We do have maintenance at Dial House, and that got a little bit of a bump this year, and that includes, taking care of the furnace and the elevators and copy machines, et cetera, et cetera. We have a line item for the chancellor's retainer and other legal. So that $125,000, please be aware that that isn't all being paid to our chancellor. We find ourselves supporting congregations when legal matters arise, and that all cost money. And so those those legal fees go into that line item, with the exception of legal fees that are paid on behalf of missions, and that goes under mission support. IT support and software, we're continuing to try to consolidate our software and trying to find efficiencies within our systems. So we're trying to hold that one as neutral as possible. Property and liability insurance, as you know from your congregations, that is a liability that continues to rise. That number is an estimate because the new premiums haven't been released yet, but I've been in conversation with our insurance rep, and he felt that that was a reasonable number. Outside services, so in our budget, there are 3 less employees this year. And one of the employees was a part-time person who would come and assist us with various matters. And so that position has now been eliminated, and that's why you see the decrease. We may use some of that funding to pick up things like doing some legal estate work that benefits our members of our diocese. And the real estate expense in Brentwood. So Brentwood, there's a beautiful piece of vacant land, and there's nothing happening on it right now. And so there are 2 major expenses associated with that. One is property taxes. We're not exempt because it's land that's not being used for religious purposes. And then also maintenance of the vacant land itself. So it has to be disked and weeded and just maintained. We have office expenses, and that took a little bit of a decrease. We're trying to realize more efficiencies in this area. So for one example, we got rid of our stamp machine, and we're starting to use stamps.com. So every time a lease comes up or something, we learn of new technology, we're trying to bob and weave and become more efficient. And then utilities, a slight increase in utilities, and you're in congregation, so I don't need to explain that one any further. And this is stuck. Oh, there we go. So here's a pie chart of the various areas of ministry. And so we can see like the Episcopate ministry is at 15%. Our public witness and support to the wider church at 18. I'm reading these to you. I know you can read, but I know they're kind of small. Congregational ministry and lifelong formation at 28%, communications and church government 8%, and finance and administration at 31%. So let me give you a summary with numbers. So the total sources of funds available for ministry is about $4.9 million. And you can see the various totals on each of those ministries. When you get down to almost the bottom, the second to bottom line, you can see there is a column, a row called TBD, and that is to be determined. So when we got the COLA, that always comes after Executive Council has approved the budget. And so the cost savings that we realized this year is about 4.48% of our budget, or $23,000. So Executive Council is the body that is in charge of deciding how those funds will be distributed amongst our ministries. And that will take us to our Q&A portion. So I am going to stop sharing, and we're going to start looking at questions.
Vamos con preguntas
Thank
y
you.
respuestas.
We'll have an opportunity to go through the chat and bring answers to the questions that are provided in the chat. And if there are additional comments or questions, we want to make
Vamos a
space
contestar
for that
preguntas o
as well.
comentarios que hay en el chat.
Ellie,
Por
would
favor,
you mind assisting us
Sierra.
in going through the chat? Thank you, Ellie.
Got it.
Sierra va a
The
contestar
first question I see
las
going back from
preguntas.
the beginning is why is assessment income so much lower in 2026 from Darren Miner?
¿Por qué
Yeah,
las
that's a great
estimaciones
question. So,
fueron mejores en
as
el
you're aware, the
2026?
program report format changed. And yes, that took
Es
everybody by
una buena
surprise,
pregunta. Todo el
including
mundo
me
está
when I opened it
sorprendido.
up for the first time and I was like, criminy, they've really changed this. And so in order to get into
Para-
the get to the same starting place for assessment calculations as in prior
Para hacer el
years,
cálculo
we
en
had a
las
questionnaire that went out
estimaciones
that
del
was separate.
diarios,
And so that questionnaire asked, how much did you pay for pass-through organizations? How much did you pay for outreach that wasn't included in your operating budget? So a couple of interesting
pagaste
observations.
que no fue
One is
incluido
that the
en tu
revenue, for lack of a
presupuesto.
better word, more of a corporate term, but the
Para
money coming
decirlo
in
mejor,
and available for ministry
el
from
el
last year
dinero
to
que es
this
de
year actually
nosotros o para el
increased. And
ministerio
it increased,
se incrementó,
not an insignificant amount. But what we learned
no en una
from
cantidad
the
significante, pero
questionnaires that identified these two different expense items is that the
vamos a
reported
identificar
expenses
estos
were much
gastos.
higher than in prior years.
Los gastos fueron
And
más
so when we
altos que un
subtracted those
poco
much
antes.
higher numbers from
Sustraímos
our
esos
base
números
number, we ended up with less
altos
available accessible funds. So
y
that net
tenemos
number went
los
down,
fondos más
but the
accesibles. Por
gross
eso los
number
números
was
bajaron.
significantly up, as was the reporting of those expenses. So I hope that that helps to answer that question.
From Emily Hopkins, I think, does the travel budget include carbon offsets for travel, air travel, etc.?
Los gastos de
It
viaje
includes them when
incluyen
they're part of the
aire,
airline ticket purchase.
incluyen boletos de avión, todo eso, sí. La
From
respuesta es
Marjorie
sí.
Sun, do our assessments pay for the $580,000 to the Episcopal Church, and how is that assessment calculated?
¿Cómo
Yes, it does.
cómo
So
se
all of the
calcula la
items in
estimación que se recibe?
all of these expenses that you see, those are
Todos
basically
estos gastos
funded
que
through
ustedes vieron
assessments for the most part,
fueron
our fees, and
fundados
some from
por
endowments. So that's the pool of money from which we can pay for these
las
ministries.
dotaciones y
The
cuotas.
assessment formula for the Episcopal Church is
Las
different than
estimaciones
the one for our congregations.
es
Because we
diferente que
don't
las
use net
de las
numbers, we use gross
congregaciones.
numbers. So it's a very different calculation, and it's a
Es,
lot more complicated.
las calculaciones que hacemos
And
son un poco
so,
diferentes.
and it's, I
Entonces,
think it's published on the
está
the,
publicado.
General Convention website, if
Estas
you're interested in what
estimaciones
numbers are picked up for that.
están publicadas.
Justin Cannon asks, is there still funding for an environmental commission now that we have a canon for racial, social, and environmental justice as well?
Hay fondos todavía para
That now is
asuntos
housed under the
ambientales
Canon for Racial, Social, and Environmental Justice, and through his
para el
oversight
ambiente de
of those
justicia.
funds and its allocation to different task force. So it is no longer its separate line item, but will be allocated by our Canon.
Emily asks if we can extend campus ministries to community colleges where our students are struggling.
¿Se pueden extender estas ayudas
Well,
a los
I think
colegios
that
comunitarios?
that's a very fair question in the sense of we have so many colleges and
Esta es una
universities
muy
that
buena
make up our
pregunta.
region. And so how
Estamos
are
tratando
those areas and schools chosen?
de cubrir esas
If
áreas
we
para
identify
hacer
folks who are
escoger
able to
las
do that
escuelas
ministry, it
para
would be
poder
wonderful to be
hacer
able
ese
to expand
ministerios
where those
y
chaplaincies are
sería
housed.
maravilloso expander esa ayuda a los colegios comunitarios.
Is from Marissa Thompson, is 1.5% for a COLA set, or is it still in flex?
No, it's set. That number is released mid-July.
Hay unos números que, lo siento, no entendí, pero son los mismos del julio pasado.
Mhm.
No, la pregunta no es muy clara.
From Canon Debbie, who is handling estates and facilities? Is this a new hire? Question mark.
The finance
¿Quién es-
department has picked up the
¿Quién está a
administrative
cargo
work.
quién está a cargo
Although
del
there will be some work that we're
departamento
going to
financiero?
have to contract.
Quizás tengamos que contratar a alguien más para hacer este trabajo.
What is the diocese doing in terms of events, support, etc. on the campuses? What are the activities and outreach for students?
¿Cómo, cómo
I think
se
that would be an excellent question to
integra
ask
a los
our chaplains. I would love to
estudiantes
get that person in
en las
touch with
universidades?
the chaplaincies, chaplains at our chaplaincies.
And we can save the chat so we can get
Amen.
all the other ones. What 3 jobs were eliminated and what's the total budget savings for Marjorie's son?
¿Cuál es
So
lo
one
que tenemos
position
ahorrado
was
en el
our
presupuesto?
part-time vice chancellor. One was our estate and planning officer, and the other one was a person who assisted with some work in the office. I don't
Una
have that
persona que
number in
trabaja
front of me right this second.
no,
Let's see. It would be approximately, this is approximately 200,000.
Dave is asking when the budget and assessment formulas will be available on the convention website for folks to see.
So
¿Cuándo será posible ver
as
esta
soon as
información
executive
en la
council
página web?
makes a decision on that small amount of money, that like $23,000, and that will be published, and then the assessment formula goes through a review that goes through various committees, and so as soon as those committees have had a chance to look at it and approve it, then that will be also published.
Serán publicados más tarde. Ahora se está trabajando en eso todavía.
John Rollinson is, there's a question at the end of this, so I'll give you the full thing. I understand that there is a bequest which dates to the foundation of the diocese and which income and distributions are shared on a proportional basis with other dioceses in California. That is one reason for a larger accounting office than other dioceses. Is there an income figure to the accounting staff for that administrative work?
It's just part of the work that we do.
Alguien pregunta de qué se hace con el dinero que se distribuye en otros lugares en California.
Paul,
Y la respuesta es,
see,
eso es lo que
see?
nosotros hacemos.
With all the cuts to the national church, are there
Con todos
any
los cortes
responsibilities being
de la
pushed down to
iglesia,
the diocese now?
hay una responsabilidad en
The
la
presiding
diócesis.
Bishop Sean Rowe had a call with bishops and canons a few weeks ago and really spoke about his vision of
Tuve una charla con los diáconos y
bringing
obispos
much of the ministries that were
traer
on a
los
diocesan level
ministerios
down to the
a un nivel
local
de
level and
diócesis,
equipping
a traerlos
local
a un nivel más
diocesan
local,
staffs to be able to
con el
resource them
equipo
in
de
the work
diócesis
of ministry. An
para,
example of that
para hacer mejor
includes
un trabajo
Title
conjunto de
IV
ministerio.
support. Before
Los títulos de
our
apoyo,
presiding bishop came into office, there were not resources available to local diocesan teams in the form of crisis
no había dinero
communications and things
disponible
such as
para
that. So
hacer
we
esto,
have greater support
pero,
on that regard.
pero hemos
There's
tenido
also
mucho
real
apoyo
conversations being
sobre
had
este
now
asunto
around youth formation and how
y ahora
resources
podemos
can
ayudar a los
be
jóvenes
provided
y
on a
tenemos
diocesan
más
level. So that's
recursos
actually one of
para
the
ayudar a
main
los
values
jóvenes.
that Presiding
Estos
Bishop
son
Rowe has
los
brought into
principales
his episcopate
valores
as presiding bishop, and we
que
can expect to hear
tenemos.
more ways that the diocese is the unit of ministry in our denomination as his tenure continues.
Ujú.
Stephanie Green is asking, is the $50,000 allocated for the program for racial, social, and environmental justice funding program cost or salary? And how is our progress being measured for being able to fund the canon and the program after the 3 years of given funding? Are we on track to be able to include them in the operating budget when the 3-year trial period expires?
So you can see that the trend is very positive
El canon
because
de
this year,
justicia
instead of
racial,
funding it
social
with
y ambiental,
$150,000,
se
we're funding
pregunta
it with
que
50,000.
si se puede
So
usar ese
we've got
dinero
one more year that we can
para-
draw from the
para mantenerlo vigente.
other fund.
El,
And
el,
I
fon-
think,
el
I
fondo
mean,
de
it looks pretty good. So as
se
long as
usa
that
para
trend
justicia
continues, we'll
racial,
be
social y
there.
ambiental. Todo está bien, es la respuesta.
Marianne Boland says, can you explain what exactly you are assessing for each congregation? Is it income, revenue?
Yeah.
¿Puedes, por
So,
favor,
as you
explicar
know, the
cómo
gold standard in the
distribuyes,
past,
cómo se
and this is something that's
distribuye
used by most dioceses in the Episcopal Church,
el
is the
dinero a
net
la
operating
diócesis,
income.
a las diócesis?
And recall also that net operating income equals net operating expenses almost always. Okay, because if you have
Es casi lo mismo.
operating expenses, then you're using
Si
operating
ustedes
income
tienen
for that. So
gastos de
those numbers are
operación,
basically the same number. So in the current Procure
tenemos los
report,
mismos
there was
números
a
si
number
hay
that basically
operaciones.
was operating expenses. Okay, so
Los
we're
gastos de
basically back
operación,
where we were using NOI,
estamos donde
except for the
estábamos
fact that
antes.
in the current version of the Procure report, the outreach and pass-throughs were not separated out. Okay, so
El
they were
alcance de lo que
included
recibimos
in
es
this
lo
expense
mismo
number. So
que lo
we
que se
did
gasta
a supplemental
en
questionnaire
en
that
el programa.
congregations filled out so that we could
Entonces,
back those two numbers out of the operating expense number. And we could get basically
prácticamente
to
lo
the same
mismo.
spot. So we're basically at the same spot we were for years and years
Estamos
and
donde
years. We
estábamos
just had to
antes.
get there in a different way. So I
No es
hope
que
that
tenemos
answers
que
your
llegar ahí
question.
de otra manera. Ujú.
David Smith is asking, is the 1.5% COLA in the diocesan budget the expected COLA rate that churches are suggested to give their employees, or will there be a different COLA rate?
It's the same rate. So I'm in the
Habrá
process
mismos-
now of computing the new clergy minimums and all of the charts and grids that go along with that. Those will all be published in the convention journal. And so to answer, short
tipo
answer
de
to your question
preguntas y
is yes, it is
respuestas
1.5%.
serán publicados en el diario del, no sé,
Marianne
la
is
página
asking,
de la
how is the
iglesia.
bishop's salary set? Is there a national standard we follow?
So
¿De
that's
dónde
part of the
tomamos
whole negotiation when the bishop is hired.
el salario
And there
del
were
obispo? ¿En qué
representatives,
nos
executive
basamos para
council and
darle
standing committee
un
that come to
salario de
that
tal
number.
naturaleza?
Once he comes to that number, he doesn't get a merit increase unless it's approved by standing committee and executive council.
Una vez
So he
que
is subject to the
un
same
obispo
COLA
tiene un
increase
salario, se
as
mantiene,
all of the rest of us are.
se le puede incrementar siempre y cuando haya una aprobación por
How
parte
does
del
the
comité.
budget reduce the financial burden on congregations, and what is the future of assessments?
¿Cuál es
So
el futuro
one of the ways that
del
helps
presupuesto de las
reduce the financial
congregaciones?
burden is that we are here as a resource to answer HR questions, to help with legal matters, to
Estamos aquí para
do
ayudar
the
con
centralized
asuntos
payroll,
legales,
to
para
manage the benefits,
descentralizar
and it frees up the
la
congregations from all of
nómina
those
y
administrative
para
roles.
ayudarnos
Also frees
de
them up for having to
reglas
know the California labor
administrativas,
laws. And so
porque las leyes de
that's one
California
piece of it.
son,
Sarah, I want to call on you
diferentes.
to
Entonces
go over
tenemos
some of the
que
pastoral sides of ways that we help out the congregations.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I really believe that our diocesan staff is here to be a resource to our congregations in the work of ministry. So in times of transition, our diocesan staff is available and helpful in seeking out leadership in the interim time, and to help in finding and searching for your next leader. In times of training for safe church and anti-racism, to be able to provide resources in those areas so that there can be consistency across the diocese and how
Sierra
we care
solamente
for all
está
of God's
haciendo
people,
asuntos
particularly
generales
the most vulnerable.
sobre lo que se está
We are
discutiendo.
also
Le está dando
really,
gracias a Michelle
Bishop Austin has made a priority in
sobre,
helping with the wellness and care of our clergy.
sobre las
We
prioridades
know
de la
that it
iglesia y de los
is important
arzobispos,
for
que toda la
clergy
iglesia
to
está
have
trabajando por el
significant
bienestar
tenures in their
de los,
places of ministry. And
de los
so supporting them
feligreses,
through
de los
either mutual
obispos,
ministry
apoyándolos,
reviews or opportunities for conflict
dándoles
management, to be able
oportunidades
to
para
help
puestos
leaders in our
mejores
congregations be as
y tener
effective as
líderes en
possible
nuestra
in doing the work that God's called
congregacional
them to do. We really see ourselves
y
as partners in this ministry,
poder
and
hacerlo
I
mejor
hope that congregations
para
feel that
hacer las
as
cosas
well.
mejor. Muchas gracias.
Next question.
Yeah.
Cool. Justin Cannon says the diocese owns a home on Keller Avenue in Oakland, which was gifted to St. Cuthbert's and now managed by the diocese. Where does the maintenance, revenue, and expenses, etc., for properties like this show on the budget?
Cuando dos
That's a
propiedades
great
están en
question.
el mismo
Michelle, you
lugar,
have any?
Yeah, so
los
that's
gastos
not an operating expense,
de
that's an expense against the real
mantenimiento
estate. And so what we do is the cost involved in maintaining that property go into a special account.
usamos el
it-
dinero que cuesta para el mantenimiento de esas propiedades
when
va
that home
a
is sold,
costos
because it does have,
generales.
there are some legal terms around the sale of that house. So when that eventually happens, the gross proceeds of the sale would be netted against the cumulative expenses. And then whatever is left over will be used in whatever manner the executive council sees fit. I hope that makes
Entonces
sense.
solamente dice que se van como gastos generales, nada más, lo que diga él.
Stephanie Green is
Es-
asking, is there a movement to cultivate long-term endowment funding for campus ministries in the diocese, since pledges are usually not possible by students and giving from alumni is typically limited?
I would love to speak to this and be able to speak to it on a broader scale,
Preguntan
stepping
sobre las
out from not
dotaciones.
just our
Si hay algo en
school
particular que
chaplaincies,
se
but our
pueda decir que
congregations.
si
What
las
we know about
dotaciones de
giving
las
right now
personas
within our churches
son
and
buenas y cómo
institutions
es
is
que se
that
manejan.
there will be perhaps the greatest transfer of wealth from this generation of boomers to the next generation. And now is the time for churches to be speaking seriously about
Está hablando
legacy
sobre
giving and how to
cómo la iglesia
maintain the
actual
sustainability of our
debe
congregations
actuar
into the future.
para las
We know that
personas
giving patterns
y
are
tenerlas con
changing based
dotaciones
on
más
generational
con
giving.
una
And
visión hacia el
so,
futuro
however, we as a diocese can support
y la iglesia y la diócesis
congregations
pueda
in this
ayudar a las
work of
congregaciones
how to
con
cultivate
mucho trabajo
legacy giving for the congregation. We
para
find that to be
futuras
very important
generaciones.
moving forward. And that also includes institutions and school groups as well, as the question references. But I'm thankful for the question because it's an opportunity just to name for the future of our church. That is a very important topic as we seek what the church is going to look like in the next 40 to 50 years.
Es un punto muy importante para ver cómo se verán nuestras iglesias en el futuro, en 40,
Marjorie
50
Sun
años.
says, we are doing all the work of building trust as a diocesan community. What is or should be the role of assessments and the diocesan budget in building and restoring trust?
¿Qué papel juegan las dotaciones
I guess that it could be a
en
source
el
of
presupuesto?
joy. I
Esa
feel
sería
right
una
now
fuente de
there's a
alegría.
lot of necessary conversation and decision-making and buy-in
Hay
that
muchas cosas
needs to
ahora en las
occur around
votaciones,
our assessments.
muchas cosas están
And my
pasando en nuestras
hope is in a
votaciones
diocese
y espero que en
where
nuestra
all of
diócesis
our churches give
todas
cheerfully
nuestras
and
iglesias
not with a
den
source
con
of thinking as
alegría.
though there's unfairness or the system is not working for them. That's where I hope we can get to.
Espero que todo sea mejor con nuestras iglesias
Mary
en el
Ann
futuro.
Bullen said, there did not seem to be much money allocated to one of the positions on the salary page, possibly the archdeacon, I think it was. Is that the number that added up to 35,000? Is that a salary figure? If yes, is that a full-time position?
Right. The church is still trying to come to terms with how to fairly
Iglesia todavía
compensate
está
our deacons.
tratando.
Historically, deacons have been an unpaid position, and yet because of
La
the
historia de los
changing
decanos han
aspects of
estado
church,
en
diaconal ministry
una
is
situación
continuing to
salarial un poco
evolve and meet the
difícil.
needs of the church in this day. And so that number is
Estamos
accurate
tratando
of
de que
what the
todo
stipend
sea un
is allocated
poco
for
mejor.
our arch
Ujú.
deacons, and the conversation continues on a broader level around equity and justice for a very important part of our church's leadership, which is our deacons.
David Smith is asking if we will be sharing the slides with folks.
Alguien
Post them
pregunta
on the
si se van a
And
compartir
this
todas las
will be
diapositivas
posted
que
as
se
well,
oyen.
this recording.
Oh, that's better.
Ajá.
You need to listen to that. Okay.
Y
Oh, I didn't
que
know that. Oh, that's
Michelle dice
okay.
que serán
Okay. I didn't know.
You better
las
straighten up your sweater there.
diapositivas
You know, I
se
didn't know we were going to be
pondrán
posted on the website.
en la
Okay.
página de la iglesia.
Does the diocese have an auditor available to congregations, and do we budget for this? From Justin Cannon.
Yes, that was the internal auditor expense. So what we will be doing is charging each congregation $500 to help offset that expense. And with the exception of our mission congregations, we will fully subsidize those. And then the costs over and above, we're hoping will be covered by that small stipend, which is around $20,000.
Están hablando de los gastos en general, de lo que se pueda
Stacy Grossman
juntar
says,
en la
to follow up
iglesia.
on Justin's question, is it possible for us to see the fund balance for special funds such as the one that you mentioned earlier, Canon Michele?
Es
Which
posible
fund?
ver para nosotros todos los
It doesn't specify
todos
in the question.
los
Yeah.
fondos
We
que
do
se
have
usan.
our annual
para-
audit, and that will be posted. I'm not trying to
Toda la
evade your
información que
question,
se está
so
hablando
I just
aquí
maybe need more information.
será subida a la página. La información de los fondos, de las
Sí,
estimaciones, de las dotaciones y todo
If I see something come back, I'll loop it back to it.
Okay.
David
se
says,
publicarán,
is
se
there a
subirán a
standard
la página.
cycle of how often churches of the diocese are able to be audited?
¿Qué tan
So
seguido se auditan
our canons state that it's an annual audit,
las
and
diócesis?
so and the Episcopal Church canons state that it is a real audit. So a real audit would be you get an independent auditor in, and it's, as a practical matter, it's far more expensive than our congregations can afford. And so our local canons permit that we can have a different sort of auditor review. And so that's what we're in the process of developing. We've got that together. It is something that will be revised on an ongoing basis as we get more input from people as they're going through the process. We want to be able to be flexible and realistic to the congregations. It is something that's done completely online. And so you can go into our website, you can fill out the forms, upload your financials and other information. We will review it and then get back to you. So we're trying to make this seamless. We're trying to make it so that you don't have to have staff there to meet an auditor and to get nervous about asking questions.
Solamente ustedes pueden verlo en la página,
and
toda
you're
la
not paying
audición,
someone
la
to sit on the
auditoría
bridge,
que se hace a la
So we're
iglesia.
really working hard to make this as seamless as possible for our congregations.
Estamos trabajando por hacer
And
lo posible
Stacy
en
dropped
la
a follow-up
congregación.
for the question on seeing fund balances for special funds. The special fund referenced was the housing
Las
gifted by St.
preguntas acerca
Cuthbert's
de
and
otros
associated
fondos
expenses.
que se
Yeah,
usan
the
para el
little ones,
ministerio.
no, those are like, we have, the real estate is, detailed out in, at convention, the list that's held by Corp Sol. We have that as part of the journal. All of these tiny due to from accounts, no, they're not published, individually.
Are there lines for organizations like Olaf or Clausen House from Paul?
Lines for Olaf House?
Yeah, like
Well, we don't fund Olaf House, and any real estate that we own is typically
Todas
owned
las
by Corp
bienes
Sol,
raíces
and
o
that is in the
propiedades
Convention
que
Journal.
tenemos
And I want to add
están
to that
registradas
there's
en la
been
congregación.
really great work on the standing committee side of really
Han hecho
getting
un excelente trabajo teniendo un control
updated
sobre
information on the role of
propiedades, bienes
institutions in our broader
raíces y
life. And
fees.
so really thankful for Don Miller and the work of standing committee of sharing that information to the broader diocese. And we hope then from this work for there to be clarity on what it does it mean to be a
Solo está dando las
diocesan
gracias por cómo se está llevando a cabo
institution
esto.
and what are the expectations on both sides of that.
Marissa is asking, who is reviewing the audit info due September 1st and how will
Alguien pregunta quién
it be
está,
charged?
quién va a
Maybe who will
revisar
be
el
charged
audio
for it, I think might have been.
y si se le pagará.
So, we are training up an auditor right now, and
Estamos,
realistically, we're not going
estamos
to be done by
entrenando a
September
un
1st.
auditor
We'll do the best we can,
y
but that is just
no
not going to be
creo que
realistic.
lo tengamos
We
listo para
will bill the
septiembre.
congregations the $500, with the exception of
Estamos
missions who will
haciendo
be fully
esto
subsidized.
por parte de la
And then
iglesia,
any
pagar
costs
$5,000,
over 500, the diocese will
500,
absorb. So this is an
pero
ongoing
la
process.
diócesis
It's a learning
absorberá.
process, and
Este
we're
es
going
un
to have
proceso
to just adjust to make it the best we can do.
un poco largo y haremos lo posible
And then there was a
por
follow-up
hacerlo.
question if this first is the due date.
Yeah, I mean, canonically, it's September 1st. Ideally, all of the congregations will have their information in by September 1st. That deadline's
Para
quickly
septiembre 1
approaching.
tendré toda
But,
la
you know,
información
we also
sobre esto.
recognize that we're all learning this process. And so there will be ample grace. And in the next few years, we should be up and completely compliant.
John Rollinson is asking the questions about other funds seeming to be related to funds such as clergy education, bishops, something fund, Fed fund, camp and conference scholarships. Is there a list of those funds available?
Hay una lista de los otros fondos que
So
se han
we
utilizado,
have on
pero
our audited
quiere
financial
saber
statements,
para
we
qué.
have
Tenemos los estados
in total
financieros,
the endowment funds. I'm trying to think.
pero
I don't think that they
quiero
don't list
pensar,
them separately.
no los hacemos
And
separadamente.
yeah, they're not listed separately.
Stephanie is wondering, are we usual as a diocese in having the assessment constitute 75% of our overall funding? Who is responsible for long-term development in the diocese, and who will be cultivating legacy giving in the Diocese of California?
I'm going to answer part of that and then have Sierra pick up the strategic piece of that. We did, well, actually the Finance Committee did a study, I think it's been like 2 years, I think it's been 2 years ago. And they did a survey of how other dioceses work with assessments. And there is a fact sheet that has been distributed
Tuvimos una reunión de
amongst the
cómo las
deaneries.
iglesias
And
trabajan
what we
con las
found was that
estimaciones, con los
dioceses, for the
cálculos,
most part, are very dependent
pero
on assessments.
las
That is
diócesis
the main
son
source of revenue,
completamente
with exceptions,
dependientes
mainly on the East
y
Coast,
manejan
of
sus propios
dioceses
números,
who
con la excepción de
are very old and very, very well
algunas
endowed from very, very,
diócesis
very wealthy
que
people
son,
in the
que
past.
son
And so those do
más
exist, but for the
antiguas
most part,
y que tienen ayuda
dioceses
de
are
de
reliant
otra gente.
on assessments. And what we also found was that for like type dioceses, we were like middle of the pack with our assessment figure. And again, that fact sheet has been distributed and it is out there, and I know the deaneries have them. So I would encourage you to
So los decanatos y decanos
meet with your
tienen
deanery and get a hold of that sheet so that you have the facts in front of you.
tienen toda esa información de las de
Yeah,
las
I don't have much to
estimaciones.
add, just to say that one of the necessary acts from the strategic vision will be to
No tengo
make
más que
sure
agregar.
that our staff is able to be equipped to do
Solo tenemos que
the
asegurarnos de que
goals
nuestro
that
personal
vision will
tenga todo lo
outline.
necesario
And we
para cumplir
are
las metas.
aware of this
Y estamos
conversation and
conscientes
are
de que esta
ready to
conversación
do what is necessary with the
para hacer
resources that are available.
todo lo
And know
necesario
that
para
there's a
usar
tension
todos los
between
recursos
a
necesarios
desired
que
increase
tengamos
of
para
services and
incrementar los
if there will be changes
servicios
to the assessment, the
y
need
habrá
to adapt.
cambios en las
So that's
estimaciones.
really sort of what I see the strategic conversation to be.
Es todo.
Mary Ann says, thank you for the detailed presentation and openness to
Gracias por la
questions. Can you briefly
presentación.
explain what deacons do and if it's full-time work? There seems to be a disparity in compensation, and I'm trying to understand, are these employees
¿Puede
being
por
paid
favor
relatively low
explicarnos qué
salaries, or
hacen
are they volunteer?
los decanos?
I would love to
¿Qué-
direct this person to the Association for Episcopal Deacons, episcopaldeacons.org. It's a really great website where it has really good information around compensation conversations happening on a denominational level over the compensation of deacons, episcopaldeacons.org.
Hay una página donde
And
informan
just shout out
todo
the
lo que hacen
deacons.
los decanos. Los decanos lo pueden checar y pueden ver que es un trabajo excepcional
Jude
con una
Harmon
información
says,
bastante
has the
amplia.
finance office or any task force on executive council or standing committee developed scenario-based projections of our key revenue streams like pledges, endowments, income over 3, 7, and 15-year horizon? I'll let you answer that. And then there's like 2 other questions in here too.
Oh, okay. So
¿Hay
we
más
have a lot of
preguntas?
historical data. It's hard to project going forward, especially with the revenue streams. But I can say that
Hay muchas
a
preguntas,
very
pero
interesting trend that we have
lo que
seen
puedo
is that
decir es que
in
tenemos
our
unos
diocese, and
cambios
those are the
muy
statistics that I'm
interesantes
working
en
with for our
nuestra
diocese.
diócesis.
We can see that ASA has continued to drop. And it could be the way it's measured. It could be that, there's some people that are just online and some people that are in person, and maybe we're not comparing apples to apples. But we have seen a decrease in attendance as measured by average Sunday attendance.
Hemos
We've
visto
also
un
seen is an increase
bajo
in
rendimiento,
the
la
revenues.
tendencia en esto,
So
pero también
what's
hemos
interesting
tenido
about that is trying
un
to look into the
incremento
future and see that
en cosas que
different age
podemos
groups give
hacer
differently.
más en el
And you know this from
futuro.
your congregations.
Mm.
Millennials give very differently than boomers do. And boomers typically, not always, but typically give bigger gifts, right? Or they're in a position to have a trust that spits off money, or charitable remainder trust. I mean, all kinds of different things to do that. And so these deeper pockets are going to term out. And when they do that, some of them are going to leave very generous gifts. And that's something that that Canon Sierra was addressing, is about going to people and making sure that they value and remember the church in their wills and in their trusts. So that's a big thing. But once that has happened, then we have to rethink how people are giving to their congregations and to the diocese. And so it's a very interesting projection with a lot of different moving parts. It's always easier to
Es un
look at
punto muy
history than it is to
interesante lo
try
que
to
se
figure
está
out how
discutiendo
giving will change, et cetera, in the
acerca de
future.
cómo funciona la
So Jude, that's
diócesis,
probably not a real
qué es lo
complete
que pueden
answer,
hacer
but
para
we
hacer,
have
pero
at least
no
part
hay
of
una,
that going forward.
no hay una respuesta y estamos haciendo lo mejor
And then there
que
were
podemos.
second part. Could you walk us through stress test assumptions about demographics, giving patterns, market change, and highlight where we see the greatest vulnerability? And if not, is it part of the diocesan strategic plan?
I think there's a lot more there to unpack than I can really do in this setting. But I think it's a great continuing conversation.
No sé qué está pasando, pero creo que estamos teniendo una conversación muy interesante sobre lo que está pasando. Sí.
I'm not seeing another question at the moment.
No veo más preguntas.
But I do see some thank yous.
Hay muchas
Oh, nice.
gracias.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming and taking a chunk of your evening and talking to us about
Gracias por
the
estar
future of our
aquí, gracias por
diocese
sus
and our plans
preguntas,
for ministry. And
gracias por
really appreciate each and every one of you. And
estar
please
aquí.
don't hesitate to
Gracias
contact us if you
a cada uno de
think of another
ustedes.
question.
No vacilen en preguntarnos, en contactarnos si tienen alguna
Go
pregunta.
in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Vayan en paz,
Amen.
vayan en paz, estén bien.
Good night. Thank you for your time here with us this
Buenas
evening. Good
noches,
night.
muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Adiós, gracias. ¿Dónde estoy? Paul, ta, 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 ta. Oh my God, ¿dónde estoy?